said, my name is Mary Beth Morris. I'm the immigration advisor here at Duquesne, and I'll be pretty much the one issuing most of the I-20s for you. Once you're here, helping you with any immigration related issues. So let's get started and we'll talk a little bit more about what opportunities are out there for you. So the first thing in the order that they would happen is called Curricular Practical Training, or CPT. CPT is something that can happen before graduation for those of you who have an F1 visa. So of course the question is, what is it? What is CPT? CPT is defined as authorization for practical training to engage in temporary employment to gain practical experience directly related to the student's major area of study. So pretty straightforward. Who is eligible? All F1 undergrad and graduate students, but not ESL. ESL is not a program that is appropriate to have CPT. You also have to have completed at least one academic year of study. So for example, if you started in August, our academic year ends in early May, that would be the academic year. You would become eligible at the end of that school year. If you started at a different time of year, just keep in mind you'd have to have had 2 semesters full-time studies. Any jobs, and we'll talk a little bit more about some opportunities, jobs are reviewed and approved by myself or another DSO here in the office. So basically, we have to determine that it is a good fit, that it is practical training directly related to your major area of study. So the question, what kind of CPT do students do? So it must be in your field of study and it must be appropriate for your level of education. So I have some examples. A biochemistry undergraduate student is offered a summer research job at a UPMC research lab. UPMC is one of the big hospitals here in Pittsburgh. Great fit, perfect, easy for me to approve. A non-example would be that a biochemistry undergrad student wants to make extra money in a summer job waiting tables. No, that is not qualifying as CPT. And so it's something very important on F1 visas when you're an F1 visa holder to not violate the terms of the visa. And a work violation would be a very serious violation. So you cannot just work anywhere, do what you might like, even if you think it's just earning some money on the side. It is not appropriate and there could be big repercussions. So once approved, CPT would be added to your SEVIS record. And I would update and issue a new I-20 to you that would specifically show what that job is, who your employer is, and the dates of the CPT. CPT could be paid or it can be unpaid. We often will consider it maybe an internship. Your school, your major might determine that you actually have a required internship. So this is a perfect fit for something like that. So it could be paid or unpaid, but it must always be approved and recorded in SEVIS before the work begins. Students must always continue full-time studies during CPT. So maintaining the F1 visa, full-time studies is always required, and that does not change. So just something to keep in mind. You'd be adding to your workload. You'd already have a full-time load of courses, and adding a CPT job, you'd want to make sure balances well with your free time. Part-time CPT we consider to be 20 hours or less per week. There's no maximum and there's no accumulation. So you can do as much CPT part-time as you wish, and it will have no effect on OPT, which we'll talk about in a moment, after you graduate. So part-time CPT is really what we recommend and what we see the most to fit in with the full-time schedule of being a student. There is the option for full-time CPT that would be considered more than 20 hours per week. But keep in mind that 12 months or more of full-time CPT actually makes you ineligible for OPT after graduation. All CPT is aggregate. So if you did a bachelor's degree and had some full-time CPT, you did a master's degree and had some full-time CPT, and worked on your PhD and had full-time CPT, all of that will continue to add up. And once you've reached 12 months, OPT is no longer an option for you. So we encourage students, to be very conscientious, keep track. It's something I always discuss and bring up throughout the time of employment to just make sure we're paying attention to it. So we said a little bit about what, OPT is, but it's also that work opportunity. It's defined as a temporary employment for practical training directly related to the student's major area of study. And it comes after graduation. So CPT, the C standing for curricular, and OPT meaning optional post-graduation. So who is eligible? A student must have been lawfully enrolled on a full-time basis for 1 academic year to be eligible. That sounds pretty easy. If you're getting a degree, you'll be here more than 1 year. So that's not usually a problem. But consider all those words: lawfully enrolled, meaning you're maintaining the visa, and full-time, one of the requirements of the visa, for at least 1 academic year. To apply, you go through a form called the I-765 form. I assist students with the process. When the time comes, I actually do more info sessions where we get more in depth about how you apply, the documents you need, and we'll do info sessions on campus, and I'm happy to work with students one-on-one. So we upload all the documents. It's an online process now. And once it's approved, you get what's called an EAD card. And those letters stand for Employment Authorization Document. So it's actually only issued for OPT. You don't get that EAD card for CPT. And, it's a little kind of like a credit card sized card with your photo on it, your information, and the approval dates for your work authorization. Work can only begin after graduation. You must work full time, so more than 20 hours per week when you're on OPT. You are permitted to accrue up to 90 days of unemployment. So when you apply for OPT, you don't necessarily need to have a job offer. So maybe you haven't been able to get a job, you're still interviewing, graduation comes, you're applying for OPT. That's fine. It's a benefit of your F1 visa, so you don't have to have that job offer, which is the opposite when it's CPT. So when you're still in school and you want to do a CPT work opportunity, you actually must first be offered a job. That's part of the process. That's how we determine if you're eligible, if the job is a good fit. So let's say you get the job offer, it's now after graduation. If you've had some days of unemployment, they just count up. They'll stop once you start working, and you don't want to accrue more than 90 days, or you actually would be finished with your OPT and you'd need to depart the US. So what kind of OPT do students do? Well, OPT must also be in your field of study and appropriate for your level of education. So some examples: a computer science graduate student is working a technical job at Box in California. An example that is not an example of OPT would be that a computer science graduate student is working as a real estate agent in California. I think those are pretty good examples. One is very clearly a fit to the major, and the other is not. So again, the benefits of the F1 visa are great. Not only are you able to be in the States and study, but you do get these wonderful opportunities for work experience. We find our students do very well with finding positions here in Pittsburgh. Sometimes it could be an online job, a remote job, but most of the time it's an in-person job. So the job is going to be around here when school's in session, and it's a CPT job. But when it comes to OPT, it does not actually have to, you don't have to stay in Pittsburgh. You're graduated, you don't really need to be on campus anymore. And we do find some students choose to maybe relocate if they're offered a really good job somewhere else. So no working as real estate agents, no waiting tables. Basically, standard OPT is available for a cumulative maximum of 12 months per educational level, which is really great because it gives you the opportunity as you finish each degree to get a little bit of experience. So maybe you did an undergrad in computer science, got your bachelor's degree, want to go ahead and do some work on OPT, you'll get a year of it. Then you say, oh, you know what? I'd like to get my MBA. I'm going to add to my education. So then you go on and get your master's in business administration. Now you get another year, another 12 months. And if after that you decide to get a PhD, likewise, you can go on for another 12 months of OPT. So there is something called the 12-month extension for OPT, and it is available to certain STEM degree recipients, STEM majors. To qualify for that STEM extension, you must have a corresponding STEM major, or CIP code, as CVIS calls it, in CVIS, and it's basically going to be what the major code that shows on your I-20 at the time that you graduate. We cannot add STEM later on. So keep that in mind. If it's something you're looking ahead to, you can clarify it with me if your major actually is a STEM major. Not all majors that sounds like they're science and STEM are actually qualified as STEM according to CVIS. So one of the examples I'll give is something like nursing. Nursing is actually not considered a STEM field. CVIS kind of uses the STEM designation to focus a little bit more on a research sort of education or career. So nursing is obviously hands-on, it's more interactive, and therefore it's not STEM. So when you're doing OPT, you will need to be full-time. For CPT, you can be part-time, but for OPT, you must be full-time. And full-time could be anywhere from 20 to 40 hours per week on average. There's actually no maximum. A lot of people say, what's the most number of hours? And there really isn't a maximum for OPT. You could work one full-time or multiple part-time jobs. So if you're able to work, let's say, a 20-hour job and a second 20-hour job, they just both have to fulfill the requirements for OPT, for your major and your level of study. You must always submit all employers to Duke Global. We need to know who you're working for. It's a CVIS requirement for you. So once we have that information, we add it to your CVIS record. The process itself is an online application process. I kind of mentioned that already. And they're very generous. They allow you to be able to apply up to 90 days before graduation. So our graduation this year is May 5th. So we're actually now within 90 days. So this is something very popular right now. I'm meeting with a lot of students. We've been doing some info sessions and helping students to go ahead and collect their documents to begin that application. Once they've applied, they must wait until the requested start date. So when we apply for the OPT, you choose when you want to start working. It has to be a date after graduation and no more than 60 days after graduation. So once you've got that date set, then your EAD card will have it printed and you can only start working after that date. So always consider, you must really want to keep your potential employers informed, so that if you're interviewing for a job and you're graduating May 5th, but your start date for EAD might be on June 1st, to just communicate to them. There is no way once you've applied for OPT for us to change your requested start date. So we work with that as part of the process, that I make sure you're aware of it. And then you'll have 12 months for the OPT. Everyone does the 12 months, that standard OPT in the same manner. Everybody applies the same. And if you're STEM, you would add that on by applying after that first year's kind of starting to come to a close. And then the STEM students would be eligible to apply and continue that OPT for another year or two. So the OPT process at a glance, you're going to first request it through me. You're going to reach out to me. I, as the DSO, will recommend you for OPT. I go into your CVIS record. I put in you would like to do OPT. I put in the date you chose to start. It'll automatically calculate the 12 months later, so you'll know what your end date would be. I give you that I-20, and then as the student, you would file the I-765. It's an online. There's a payment. It's about $400 to $500, depending. That's very common that when you're applying for some of these benefits, there is a fee for it. So keep in mind, those are things down the road you'll need to budget for. There's no cost to apply for CPT, but for OPT, there is. So you're going to file it all online. And then USCIS, so the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service, will review and what we call adjudicate that form. So determine if you're eligible, if you've fulfilled all the requirements of the application. If they approve you, then they would apply for the EAD card to be mailed to you, and you can start work. And once you do that, you'll always need to be in touch with me. As I said, we need to put that information into SEVIS. We need to kind of document your employers. If you change employers, if you change states and move somewhere, California, we need to have your new address. So even while you're on OPT, you're still kind of considered one of our students through the OPT the first year, if you're on STEM through the additional 2 years. And so you're always still in touch with us. You're on our immigration document, you're still on our I-20. And as the DSO, I continue to report all those address changes and employer information in SEVIS routinely so that SEVIS is always up to date. And at any point, we know where you are and we know what you're doing.